Welcome to our 10th webinar, and we are honored and so thankful that Governor George Pataki is joining us this afternoon. And I know that his speaking with us has cost him some travel time, and so we are especially thankful. Governor, again, what an honor to have you with us. Governor Pataki is one of those people who really doesn't need any introduction. You all know that he was a 3-time governor in the state of New York. His list of accomplishments is phenomenal. He created 750,000 jobs. He preserved more than 1 million acres of open land. He cut taxes by $143 billion. Governor, we sure do miss your leadership, and again, are so happy to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dalton, and let me thank you and CFES and Brilliant Pathways for what you've done, because you were talking about jobs and giving people the chance to have a decent living, and your commitment and the organization's commitment to bringing better educational opportunities to every corner of America, not just urban America, but underserved rural America like Western Texas and the Adirondacks, has meant a great deal to literally hundreds of thousands of young people in this country, and hopefully hundreds of thousands more. So thank you.
Well, thank you. But is it going to be different? And if so, how? And what do we need to do to get ready?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I can say in response to that question, Rick, is yes, it's going to be different. The magnitude of the change, the nature of the change is something I think better minds than mine are grappling with right now. But I think one of the profound changes is going to be the attitude towards higher education. We had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of college students sent home in March from colleges. There had been the beginning of a questioning of the value of paying $60,000, $70,000 a year for a degree, and whether that made sense, not just economically, but from the standpoint of time. And now with the uncertainty as to whether colleges will reopen in the fall, I think there are going to be a lot of people who are just discouraged. And that's why your organization's role is going to be even more important. There are going to be people who are saying, well, why am I going to commit to go when it might not be open? There are going to be families that are saying, we just lost our job. How are we going to pay for tuition? We get enhanced unemployment now, but that ends in July. So maybe we just have to rethink whether or not our children should go to college at all. So how this is going to change, I think, is hard to say. But I think there are a number of things that are clear. When colleges open, and I hope it's this fall, they're going to do a lot more to limit the congregation of students, whether it's limiting social or sporting activities, or as a number of universities like Columbia and Brown have already said, they're going to a mandatory trimester system where 1/3 of the students will not be on campus each of those 3 semesters. I think there's going to be an enormous interest in distance learning. There has been before, but now we're doing this Zoom podcast. I can't tell you the number of Zoom conferences and meetings I've had since America was shut down because of the virus. And people are becoming more comfortable with this. And I think distant learning was something that was in the works, but I think it's going to now become far more prevalent. And whether this happens or not, but you've authored and analyzed some very interesting studies. One is the fact that when a family lives more than 50 miles from a college campus, the odds of their attending college is much, much lower. And the colleges are going to be hurting economically. They're not going to have the tuition fees. They're not going to have the enrollments. They're going to have additional costs to deal with the social distancing issues. So one idea I have had is to create cyber campuses, or a campus where in a rural part of the Adirondacks or of West Texas, instead of having a full-blown campus, you could have a hall, a room, where you set up the ability to do Zoom distance learnings, because a lot of students, as you know, in rural America don't have access to high-speed internet, don't have the computers at home. And this would be something where within a reasonable distance from their home, they could get together and be able to learn, have a distant learning experience without having to have that capability in the home. So there are going to be a million changes. None of us know exactly what's happening, but just everyone has to be prepared to be adaptive and flexible, and also aggressive in supporting organizations like yours, because the discouragement of young people from looking for higher education is a very damaging trend for our country. And organizations like yours are going to have to do twice as much to try to overcome that.
Thank you, Governor. Is there a need for us as an organization to be nudging the colleges? I mean, that's a wonderful thought that we have these sort of satellite campuses around the country. How do we make that happen? Some are going to figure it out, but many will not.
Some are going to figure that out, but I just think that's going to be a paradigm they're going to have to look at. And it's in the college's interest. It's not just in the students' interest, but they're not going to have the tuition fees, and they're going to be hurting financially. They're going to have higher costs and lower revenues. And this is a way where they could get tuition from students without having to incur the massive cost of having them brought to, housed, fed, taken care of at that central campus. You know, our healthcare system over the last 15 years has evolved, where you have major tertiary hospitals, but then you have everything from ambulatory clinics to emergency room settings scattered around that feed that main tertiary hospital that has all the mega resources we would expect. I could see a similar pattern developing in higher universities, where you have that tertiary campus where students go for a period of time, or maybe for the whole time, but then you have this satellite network that would be lower cost, more accessible, and yet continue to provide tuition for the university, and more importantly, higher education for the child. So it's going to be a lot of rethinking. I think your organization is well positioned to talk to the universities about the need to have this lower cost option, this more convenient option, not just for the student, but in the interest of the university as well.
Thank you, Governor. This segues nicely into the job, the career landscape. How will that change?
Boy, you know, that's a question that I think everybody in the world right now is wrestling with. You know, we have this 40 million newly unemployed, and much of the country is still shut down economically, disappointingly, in my mind. As it reopens, a lot of those temporary layoffs are going to be permanent job losses. And that's where having two things. One is skill sets. There are going to be people who are going to have to train for a different nature of economy. You know, for example, I think one of the positives that will come out of this is American manufacturing jobs will come back, because people understand we can't be dependent on China for our drugs, for our personal medical equipment, for some critical components of our society's needs. And there's going to be a bipartisan effort to bring those jobs back to America. But it's not going to be manufacturing the way it was in the 1920s. It's going to be computerized manufacturing. It's going to be 3D printing. And it's going to be things that require, yes, they're going to be wonderful manufacturing jobs, but they're going to require a completely different skill set. How do you run a 3D printer? How do you fix a 3D printer? How do you run a computerized cutting tool to make some of the necessary things that will now be built in America? So I think job training is one, developing that skill set. And the second thing is encouragement. You know, one of the things that most concerns me about the length of the shutdown is people just getting discouraged. Americans are by nature optimistic people. But there comes a point where when you think, well, it's 15 days to flatten the curve, then maybe it's a month, then maybe it's 2 months, and now approaching 3 months, people give up. And we can't let them. We have to reach out to them and say, hey, we understand. You know, there's a reason for you to be concerned. There's a reason for you to feel down. But this is temporary. And if you develop the skill sets and the right attitude and partner with the right organizations who can help you out, then we're going to be fine as we come out of this.
So I love that. So you're saying encouragement, agility, and build agility are things that we need to do. Do you see in this new sort of economic landscape, job landscape, that there will be voids, that there will be opportunities for people who are agile, who don't get discouraged, to step up and make some significant things happen?
Absolutely. I think leadership matters, and those who aren't discouraged. It's not just about them. It's about their being a symbol and a sign of hope for those who have been discouraged. And you have to have not just actual policies that work, but also symbolic actions that encourage people. And, I was governor on September 11th, and Manhattan was a complete, the theaters were empty, the hotels were closed, the restaurants were empty, the streets were devoid of any people. We didn't have tourists for months on end. And one of the things I did is, a few weeks after September 11th, Robert De Niro and I went shopping in Lower Manhattan. And we went from store to store. We had all the cameras with us. He bought expensive stuff. I bought cheap stuff. I was still getting a government salary. But it was to send a message, that it's okay. We know you're afraid to come back to Manhattan. We know you're afraid if you're here, New York might be attacked again. But those fears aren't justified. And that's the type of thing that those who are out front and still fighting and believing in the future can do, symbolic acts where their neighbors or the people in their industry or their union see that they're going forward in a positive way. And that sends a signal to them that, hey, maybe things aren't as bad as I might have thought.
So certainly we as an organization need to step up and symbolically and otherwise encourage. We need to encourage our educators. We need to encourage our students. Thoughts about that?
Well, you're doing that. That's what you've been doing even before the virus. And, just the job that CFES and Brilliant Pathways has done in mentoring young people who otherwise wouldn't have thought about higher education, that, hey, maybe this is for me, is exactly what should be done now. And it's even more important because a lot of them are just going to become discouraged and say, it's too expensive, it's too remote, it's uncertain whether or not the school will even be open. So I'm just going to choose a different path or no path and just stay at home. So the effort that you do in outreach and mentoring to people becomes even far more important. Another thing I think that is really important, if I was a university president today, I'd say we're opening in the fall. We understand that, if the virus gets worse or if government doesn't let us, there are certain factors out there that could prevent it from carrying out. But today, I am announcing that we are preparing and we expect to be open in the fall. Mitch Daniels, the president of Purdue, announced that 2 weeks ago. And they have more applications to Purdue than they've ever had in history because people are saying, yes, it is going to be open. It is going to be functioning. And they're taking steps to make sure that the students are protected from the virus. So eliminating the uncertainty, you can't eliminate it completely, but at least tamping down the uncertainty. What's going to happen in the fall by saying we're opening, we're preparing, whether it's going to a trimester where 1/3 of the students aren't there, or whether it's doing, instead of big lecture halls with 200 people in that hall, we're only going to have 50 people in the hall and the rest will have to learn remotely. Laying out a plan of action now, saying we will be open, I think all of a sudden lets this uncertainty start to diminish. And of course, there's never 100% certainty. Something could happen between now and then, but at least sending that symbol, sending that signal that we expect to be here and we hope that you want to take advantage of the opportunity we're going to give to you. The only school I know that's done that is Purdue with Mitch Daniels. I wish others would make that same announcement to encourage people to start thinking positively instead of just to be captured in this fog of doubt as to what the future might bring.
Those are great points, George. The president of University of Vermont said the same thing. Of course, he a year ago was at Purdue, so he might have been influenced by what happened there. But there are very few presidents who are saying, yes, we're going to be open. There are a whole lot who are saying we're not sure, which is, again, that fog of uncertainty. And then there are a few who are saying, no, we're not going to be open in the fall. But that's a wonderful point, and it certainly speaks to the need we as an organization need to proceed. And we have task force that we put together to look at our conference, to look at our college and career readiness trainings, to look at our calendar for the year. And we are about to make a statement, but hearing you speak makes me realize that instead of waiting until the 16th of June, we better let people know and figure it out by next week. That's very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think any positive news, and of course, no one can say with absolute certainty where we're going to be in late August or September, but any positive news that we intend to go forward, whether it's CFES with the mentoring program or the Brilliant Pathways efforts, or particularly colleges saying, yes, we will be here and we will be open for business and we will protect you, I think just helps to lift the mental attitude of people who now, because of jobs and uncertainty, are just too often so discouraged.
That's great advice. Thank you. So, George, you mentioned 9/11, and of course that comes to mind as we think about the current crisis. What are some of the differences? And you were the steady leader in 9/11 for not only the state, for the country, and you guided the rest of us in a way that caused us not to panic at a time when things could have blown apart. What are the differences between these two?
Well, Rick, I'm sorry I lost you, but I don't know if you can still hear me, but you were almost to the point, and I think I understand what you were going to ask. There are a lot of similarities between September 11th and what is happening now. One of them being that we understand who really makes America a great country. It's not the great basketball player or the Hollywood star or the big celebrity. It's the Americans doing their jobs every day well. On September 11th, firefighters and police officers and EMTs. And today it's the people in the grocery stores, stocking the shelves, checking people out, the truckers keeping supplies going. And I fear that I have just lost the conference, but let me see if I can try to get back.
You're still on. We've lost Rick, though.
All right.
I'll try to get him back while you finish your thought.
Yeah, so that we understand that the people who really make this country great are the people who go about their jobs and do them well day in and day out, particularly now, those in the hospitals, the orderlies, the nurses, the doctors, and all those working so hard to keep people safe. The big difference is that this is global and national, whereas September 11th, even though there was uncertainty as to what could happen afterwards, was largely confined geographically. And that requires a different response. What we did after September 11th is create tremendous incentives to businesses and to small business, to companies, to not-for-profits to reopen and rebuild in Lower Manhattan. And they were enormously successful. And I'm extremely proud of, if you go to Lower Manhattan today, what we've been able to do accomplish at what was called Ground Zero and how vibrant that community economically and socially is today. We have to do that nationally as well. And I think the CARES bill, the $4 trillion stimulus bill passed about a month or so ago now, was a tremendous step in the right direction. Government at this point cannot be passive. I think the PPP program, even as imperfect as it is, has helped hundreds of thousands of small businesses to be able to keep their employees and keep them on the payroll. The enhanced unemployment benefits are absolutely critical because of this unprecedented increase in unemployment. But one of the differences from September 11th is we're not going to be out of the woods as quickly this time because it is global and national as opposed to geographically limited. And that's why I think Congress and the White House need to continue to try to set aside partisanship, as hard as that is, and continue to try to find common ground to do additional things to help us get small businesses, get workers back working, and get the economy open. Now, one of the things that I am discouraged about is how so many of the states just don't seem to understand the social and human consequences of the economic shutdown. There are parts of New York today that I think could reopen in a major way. And it would send a signal that as we get through this, that we're going to do everything in our power to return to normalcy as quickly as possible. Yes, there's the risk of a rebound and an additional spike if we don't do it intelligently. But look at the data from the states that have reopened. See what they're doing right. See what they might not be doing right. Prepare for the possibility, but try to reopen the economy quicker than we are today. It's just the Adirondacks in New York City are in the same state, but they are very different. And the idea that because one part of the state is suffering still horribly and still hurting and unable to take certain steps to reopen doesn't mean that the other parts, if they have met the criteria scientifically, shouldn't reopen right now. So continued government incentives, an effort to try to find ways to reopen, if not an entire state, but parts of the state as quickly as possible, consistent with good health policy and the data and what it shows. And then just the efforts of everyday Americans, business people, union people, workers, getting back to work, doing what they do so well, and giving people confidence that, yes, this has been a horrific blow, one we've never seen in my lifetime, but we're going to get through it.
Thank you. Oh, turn my video back on too. Hello, everyone. Well, while we're trying to get Rick back, I thought I would pop in and ask you, what word of advice would you give to our students? I know we have had to use tremendous perseverance and agility during this time, as we adjust to the rapidly changing landscape. And we've been trying to provide examples for our students for how they can use essential skills to help them also get through this, coming out of it ahead. So what word of advice would you offer them?
Well, first of all, Christina, the efforts that you and CFES and Brilliant Pathways are making is tremendous. And it's never been more important than now because of the discouragement. One of the things that I would do, and you may well be doing it because you've been ahead of me the whole time on this entire issue, and that's a credit to the whole organization, but is ask students what they need. What are they troubled about? Are they concerned that they don't have the ability technically or from a standpoint of access to engage in distance learning? Are they concerned because of their parents' job status that they might not be able to afford tuition if they go back? Are they concerned that they're going to make this commitment and get all ready to go back to school or to attend school in the fall and then it's not there? I think one of the things that I learned early on in getting involved in government is, people like me or people in positions like mine often think they have all the answers. Well, unless you ask the questions, you're not going to know the answers. And what you've done has been tremendous, and you're probably ahead. But I would really make an effort to find out from students at risk in rural areas, in the Adirondacks, in Western Texas, in the inner city, what is their attitude towards going to school this fall or next fall, a year from now? And how has that changed since early March? And then you can target the responses to meet what people actually are most concerned about.
That's true, and there are a number of concerns that I'm sure our students have right now, and just reaching those first seems to be like the very first thing that we do before we can start building that college and career readiness. Because if you're not ready for life today, you're not ready for college and career in the future.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think one of them is going to be cost. It's always been a factor, and there have been organizations that have been enormously helpful in meeting that. But I think today, when you're worried about your parents' job, or they may have already been laid off or not have a job, when the cost of tuition is so high, and there's uncertainty about what the job market will be when you get through your higher educational experience, I think universities, colleges, community colleges have to make an enormous effort to offer a lower cost option. And I would think that that's something that could help those at-risk students considering whether or not to go to reconsider and say, yeah, it is in my interest to do this.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're not going to get Rick back, and I know that you have a very tight schedule. So if there's anything you would like to say in closing, you may do so.
Well, Christina, thank you for doing this. And it just points, as I started out in saying we should have these cyber campuses, because Rick obviously has limited capability where he is, which is not surprising. That exists throughout. But things are going to have to change. There's going to have to be lower cost options for students to attend higher education. Organizations like Brilliant Pathways CFES are becoming more and more important because of the discouragement and the uncertainty looking forward, both at the existence of the educational opportunity and then the job after that opportunity exists. We're going to have to develop new skill sets to take advantage of opportunities that the insourcing of American manufacturing and American production are going to create. But most importantly, believe. You know, after September 11th, the stock market crashed the day it opened. And the press goes, what's going on, to the head of the stock exchange? And he said, don't ever bet against America. And if you had listened to him then, you could have made a lot of money. And today, you know, people are doubtful and concerned and worried. But take those words to heart. Don't ever bet against America. It's a tough time. It's going to be a tough time for a while. We're in this together. We're going to come out of it together. And we're going to be stronger than ever. So, Christina, thank you. Dr. Dalton, if you can hear me, thank you for all you do. And to all of you on this podcast who are so involved in helping young people to have better lives through enhanced educational opportunities, thank you for what you do. Stay strong. We're going to be fine.
Thank you so much, Governor, for joining us. We truly appreciate the time that you are able to share with us and your insights into the situation.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.